Hey, what's going on YouTube? It's Pyromancer here, and welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all having a wonderful day, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world. And a quick shout out to those of you that came to this video at the moment of release. I appreciate you guys very much, and I hope you enjoy. For those of you that are popping in a little bit later on, you're awesome too. But today, I want to talk to you guys about, my favorite thing, N'Zoth. Not my favorite, but one of my favorite things. And a big glaring issue that I have with N'Zoth, and to fit the bill for this, I think we ought to change the lighting a little bit, right? So, what we're going to talk about today is a pretty glaring issue. And I know, somewhere out there, Taliesin is just screaming at his monitor, because I'm going to look in this forbidden book. I know, it's Chronicle, right? This super duper hyper all true canon book of nothing but factual information. Even though it can tell me where the Emerald Dream came from, it can tell me how light and void supposedly collided to birth the universe, but it can't explain to me where the Shadowlands came from, and it doesn't mention Argus the Unmaker either. That's probably just a coincidence. Anyway, let's move forward, because I have a problem with what Chronicle says and what we've been shown lately in the Warcraft universe. And that problem is N'Zoth's location. So if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to show you guys real quick a map of original Kalimdor. If you did not know, before the Sundering, before the implosion of the Well of Eternity, after the scandalous bargain between Queen Azshara and the Burning Legion took place, Kalimdor was actually one single huge continent, basically a Pangea. And on this continent, the Night Elves had a grand empire, the Kaldori Empire, which I would actually like to have seen more than the Black Empire, personally. But it spanned the entirety, nearly, of all of Kalimdor. Now, if we go in here to the maps in Chronicle, there's a map that shows the area that the Night Elves occupied, and I'd be happy to show that to you as soon as I find it. There are also maps on here that show you where the old gods had reign in their domains. And I want to clarify something real quick. This map right here, this is so commonly referred to, and a lot of people misinterpret what this map is showing you. People assume that the area for Yogg-Saron, for example, that is marked in purple, that is the area that Yogg-Saron's body took up. That is not true. These are simply to mark their domain and territory. This is not their whole body. And as you can see, Y'Shaarj was here in the center. Yogg-Saron was up to the north in the Northrend area, of course. Cthulhu was over in the southwestern area. And N'Zoth, interestingly enough, was over towards the eastern side of Kalimdor, pretty far east of the Well of Eternity. And as you can see, there's no water around where N'Zoth would have allegedly been. I mean, there's basically one kind of river and some tributaries over towards where Lordaeron would be, of course, and then down towards like the Cosmodan kind of area, of course. But here's the thing: Chronicle tells us that N'Zoth was buried underground. All of the old gods were supposedly, by the Titan forged in the Keepers, buried underground at the behest of the Pantheon, right? Right? Well, then how come in the Azshara Warbringer, N'Zoth says this to Queen Azshara?
For 1,000 years, bound beneath these waves, I have watched you. I have tasted your essence.
As you can hear N'Zoth say, for 1,000 years, bound beneath these waves, I have watched you. Here's the problem. According to Chronicle, N'Zoth was not underwater. So when N'Zoth says, bound beneath these waves, I'm curious what N'Zoth is talking about. I mean, as we can see in the new Azshara raid, there's quite clearly some Titan facility down where Queen Azshara has access to. There are clearly spectral chains that are binding something down there. And that would match the prison for Yogg-Saron. It would also, I believe, match some of the bindings that were used in some of the facilities that had to do with Y'Shaarj down in Pandaria. What these spectral chains are exactly, I'm not sure. I assume that they're magical bindings crafted more than likely by Loken, magical enchanted bindings, and I'm pretty sure that's actually what Chronicle says that they used to imprison them. They subdued them and put them into a stasis, basically, but they did not kill them. So if N'Zoth was underwater for 1,000 years before the Sundering, where the fuck was N'Zoth? Because he could not have been bound underneath waves according to where Chronicle places him. And Taliesin made the astute observation that the supposed location of N'Zoth is coincidentally almost perfectly between Kul Tiras and Zandalar. Here's the problem, is that Queen Azshara's Eternal Palace has access to the prison of N'Zoth, so unless N'Zoth was moved, which doesn't really make any sense, then I don't understand why N'Zoth would be depicted as right between Kul Tiras and Zandalar. That doesn't make any fucking sense, because guess what? Zinashari and Nazjatar, by proxy, are supposed to be built next to the Well of Eternity. So unless that's not true, and the location of Zinashari, the remains of it, and likewise the newly built Nazjatar, unless those are actually not next to the Well of Eternity, as we've always been told they are supposed to be, then something is very wrong here. These waves that N'Zoth is bound beneath, that's very fucking curious to me. And the biggest thing about it is this. There was one large body of water that the elves did make their home right next to, and it was known as the Well of Eternity. Here's the problem, is that that's where Y'Shaarj was supposedly ripped out of the earth by Aman'Thul, causing a grievous wound and something that the Titans for some reason couldn't stop. So here's the deal. N'Zoth says to Azshara, I have tasted your essence. I'm curious as to how N'Zoth was able to do that, because Queen Azshara, being, of course, Queen of the Kaldorei, leader of the Highborn and the Light of Lights, almost seemingly destined for greatness. Queen Azshara, I would not be shocked, and it's probably in one of these books fucking canonized somewhere, probably, that Queen Azshara dabbled quite a lot in the energies of the Well of Eternity, because why wouldn't she? Why wouldn't she? What if N'Zoth was imprisoned in the Well of Eternity? It's not the first time that I've said this. It's not a new idea for me. I don't think N'Zoth is between Kul Tiras and Zandalar, and I certainly could be wrong, but I don't think that's where he is. And there's another problem with this. It's that when Queen Azshara is going down under the water, and she's, her empire's falling, which is basically like the Roman Empire, and Queen Azshara is a lot like Aphrodite, but that's a different video. When her empire was falling and she was going down into the depths, it seems to me, and you can look on this video and see, that Queen Azshara goes unconscious. She goes unconscious. Her eyes close, they roll back in her head, and she sinks down into the water, which, by the way, that massive tidal wave that took out Zinashari, that's from the Well of Eternity. The in-game representation for the Well of Eternity in that dungeon from Cataclysm is shit. That did not do Zinashari justice whatsoever, clearly. Zinashari looked to be more closely affiliated with the likes of Suramar, a gigantic elven city. Just absolutely miraculous to behold. But that Well of Eternity we saw was not in any capacity, like most of the things that are depicted in the game, to scale. That was not a to-scale Well of Eternity, because the Well of Eternity is supposed to be a massive lake. And the lake that you see in the panned-in view at the start of the Azshara Warbringer, that's the Well of Eternity. What a big-ass body of water for something like an old god to go into. The point that I'm getting at this moment is that she goes unconscious. N'Zoth is very, very similar to the Lovecraftian herald of the old ones, Cthulhu. Cthulhu waits dead and dreaming in the sunken city of Relay, right? And when essentially in the Cthulhu mythos, the end times comes and Cthulhu rises from the depths with his city, chaos spreads across the land and pretty much everything turns into a shit show. But here's another thing. Cthulhu influences a lot of his followers through dreams. That's curious, because N'Zoth says things like, "I've dreamed your destiny. I have seen your dreams," or "I've tasted your dreams." Azshara says very similar things along those lines. And dreaming, now that's a curious one, because the whole Rift of Aln thing I've talked about in videos, and how all that nightmare corruption came straight out of the Rift of Aln. It would seem that when Queen Azshara goes down into the water, she goes unconscious, and she is then being spoken to in her dreams. She's not conscious when this is happening. I think this is made very clear by the cinematic. Her eyes roll back. She goes unconscious. She then finds herself in the blackened depths, somehow sustained even though she's underwater. The fish comes out, yada yada. "Only I can sustain you. Death is near. Let's make a bargain," etc., etc. And then, after she makes her bargain with presumably N'Zoth, N'Zoth gets very angry, yells at her, and there is this kind of phase, kind of like zoom out thing, and then Queen Azshara opens her eyes again. I don't know if anyone's noticed this or not. I haven't seen it in anyone else's cinematic analysis, but sorry if I'm like overconfident with this, but how the fuck am I the only guy that sees that Queen Azshara clearly goes unconscious during this point in time? So that is an interesting thing. I think that N'Zoth is basically communicating to her in dreams, and I think that what we saw in that cinematic is not real and truly what is there. And another little thing that happened here that I don't really know if anybody noticed, when Queen Azshara comes to, and she's kind of like looking around, you can see that the pits of her eyes are black, but as she moves her eyes around, you notice that there's something light that's like reflecting in her eye. There's literally like a very bright object that's like in her field of view. It's directly in front of her, and it takes her a second to see it, but she looks directly at it, and then the transformation seems to take place. So I don't know what exactly Queen Azshara is looking at in that exact moment, because it would seem, as far as we can tell, this architecture that we see in the cinematic there's a lot of kind of vertical spires with things on them, very spiked at the top, and there's a red and black looking kind of a color scheme. But what we're seeing as far as data mining goes from the Queen Azshara fight, those same pillars actually seem to be Titan pillars, and there are chains attached to them. So either what Azshara was seeing was not real and true to reality, or it was in some sense real and just altered in a way now that we're going there and seeing what is truly there. It would seem that there is a Titan facility down there, and N'Zoth is potentially locked down there somewhere, but we still have yet to actually see N'Zoth, right? So I'm just very confused at this whole thing. It doesn't add up on either end. Chronicle does not add up with what's in the game or with what's in the cinematic. And there's one other huge detail that's actually in Chronicle Volume 3. This is what Chronicle Volume 3 has to say about the location of N'Zoth. And if you have the hardcover copy, it's on page 194 in the section, The Unseen, in the Cataclysm section. This is what it says here. The old gods had suffered shocking setbacks in recent years, including the defeat of Cthulhu and Yogg-Saron at the hands of Azeroth's defenders. They had never anticipated such fierce resistance. They had never anticipated the rise of such fearless heroes. This is what it says about N'Zoth. Listen closely. Shrouded in an ocean of fevered dreams, among the bones of nameless horrors, N'Zoth remained untouched by the blades of mortals. The old god was certain that Azeroth's champions would eventually seek it out and try to overwhelm it as they had done to Cthulhu and Yogg-Saron. Was N'Zoth wrong? Nope. N'Zoth was not afraid, but it did sense that a window of opportunity was fast closing. The world was wounded by the recent war against the Lich King. The ancient dragon aspects were consumed by their own struggles. Ysera had recently returned from the depths of the Emerald Dream, but she was not the same as she had once been. Prophetic visions bombarded her mind, and she found it difficult to tell what was real from what was not. Meanwhile, Nosdormu had disappeared in the timeways in search of the shadowy force that was disrupting the past, present, and future. Malygos was dead, leaving the Blue Dragonflight leaderless. Only Alexstrasza continued safeguarding Azeroth. But she was in dire need of rest after helping the Alliance and the Horde fight in Northrend. The time to usher in the hour of twilight was now. But the most important thing, shrouded in an ocean of fevered dreams. Among the bones of nameless horrors, N'Zoth remained untouched by the blades of mortals. I don't know if anyone's ever noticed this, and I've pointed this out before, but in the Rift of Aln, where you fight Xavius, where the root of the nightmare corruption comes from, you're standing on water. Most people don't realize it, but you can see reflections in it. When ads come out, when things spawn out of it, it ripples. When things hit the ground, I have footage of it. If I can find it, I'll show you. When the tentacles slam down, you can see it ripple through the water. You're standing on liquid. Malfurion refuses to go into the Rift of Aln, and apparently it's the root of where Xavius's power came from. So thinking about all the nameless horrors and red and black, crazy, terrifying looking things that are coming out of there, what do you suppose is on the other side of the water? Did you guys know that at the bottom of the ocean, because there is such an incredible amount of water above you, light at the bottom of the ocean essentially is indistinguishable. It's basically a red and black indistinguishable. If I'm to understand this correctly, and correct me in the comments if I'm incorrect, but I'm pretty sure that's how it is. Shrouded under an ocean of fevered dreams. And the nightmare is all red and black corruption, and it seeps out of a place that is literal liquid. And after we handle the Emerald Nightmare, what does Xal'atath say to you? The final prison weakens. Ah, something has changed. The final prison weakens. Come, we must prepare. So whatever we did in the Emerald Dream apparently affected the final prison, whatever the fuck that means. The main point of it is that N'Zoth has this connection to dreams. And the dream through the Rift of Aln, I don't know what's on the other side of the Rift of Aln. Fuck, we don't really even know what the Rift of Aln is. But we know that there's an ancient and powerful evil that lingers. God of the deep? Xal'atath says, the rift is deep and vast. And somewhere down there, it stirs. What stirs? What stirs in the Rift of Aln? And what does the Rift of Aln connect to? Because in the Emerald Nightmare, we were in Moonglade, jumped into basically a little mini maelstrom in Lake Elunara, not similar to Elunaria at all. We jumped through that, drowned ourselves. Essentially, we didn't drown ourselves. We jumped in, and that's where we got down to the Rift of Aln. And above us, we saw only roots. There was no water or anything. So I passed the question off to you. Where the fuck is N'Zoth? Is Azshara actually, are we actually getting direct access to N'Zoth? Is N'Zoth somehow tapped into the dream from the bottom of the ocean? Because if that's the case, then there's only one answer for that. He's either tapped right into Azeroth, or he is tapped into a world tree at the bottom of the fucking ocean. And in my opinion, there's no other answer, unless he's in some way connected consciously through Queen Azshara, and when she sleeps, he gets to see her dreams. But the whole N'Zoth saying, mortals, I have dreamed your destiny, and all this shit tying into it, we're missing a really big piece of this puzzle right now. And again, both of these Chronicle novels in certain aspects they do, but they mostly don't really line up with what is seemingly the truth of what we're about to witness. And I've been saying for a very long time that I don't think that these books, specifically the first one, and specifically stuff that pertains to the first couple chapters, is entirely true. And in fact, in Chronicle Volume 3, I just took a picture of it. There's a little excerpt on Sylvanas about the Wrathgate. In the first fucking thing it says is, like most good lies, Sylvanas Windrunner's account of the rebellion in the Undercity contained some truth. So when you are reading these books, as I've been saying for quite some time, the best lies often contain at least a little bit of truth. That plays into the whole half-truths thing, right? And I just really think, as much as people will say that I'm wrong, these books, this one in particular, man, these are not entirely to be trusted, specifically with the Titans and how they interacted with the world of Azeroth and what the old gods are, where they come from, and what they're actually doing. That shit is not fucking true. I don't care what anybody says, and I will say that until this game fucking dies. So in like 2 months. No, I'm just kidding. I'm trying to be optimistic, but I just wanted to surprise you guys with a video today, talk about this, because I just think that there's some, maybe a little bit of communication that we could have on this. We could start a discussion and try to figure out, like, where actually is N'Zoth? Like, is he at the bottom of the ocean? If he is, how was he able to tap into the nightmare in that manner? Yes, I know Yogg-Saron gave N'Zoth access, allegedly. I'm aware of that, but you still have to find a way into the dream. The same way that Yogg-Saron tapped in via Andrasil, now Vordrasil, N'Zoth had to find a way to get into the dream. There must be a way. So, and I think that's through the Rift of Alm. So here's my opinion. My personal stance on it is that somehow, some way, N'Zoth or Ny'alotha is in the Shadowlands, and that somehow is basically tapped into the Emerald Dream. But I can't, there's no way to prove that. Good news or bad news, depending on how you look at it, as of 8.2, the Void is attacking the Dream. Wow. Shocker, considering a pretty long while ago, I speculated the potential that was actually going to happen because of that stupid little fucking Void remnant flower that was left in the Dream. And people said, Pyromancer, it's not going to be anything. You're over-speculating. It doesn't mean anything. And then you find out, spoiler alert, that exact flower was the root of the Void corruption in the Dream. And none of the Emerald Dragons know where Ysera went, even though after killing Xavius, we can clearly see Ysera's spirit walking to and from the flower. I'm of the opinion that Ysera fucking put it there, because what better way to be corrupted in some manner and destroy the Dream than plant a flower, a figment of life that is actually corrupted by the Void. And now all of a sudden when you go there, there's these Void roots that have grown up in the very same spot that the flower was going to be. You can pick the flower and put it in your inventory. And all the while, all these green dragons that are supposed to be guardians of the Dream who follow Ysera and all this stuff and Cenarius, they don't know where the corruption came from. They had no idea that it was even there. So another crazy note before I end the video, because I'm just rambling at this point. Did you guys know that in D&D, green dragons are the most evil kind of dragon? And following them is red dragons. Red, green, blue, black, chromatic dragons are all evil in D&D, and the good ones are the metallic dragons, like bronze. Just so happens that we have one metallic dragonflight in WoW, and all the others are chromatic. But I digress. It's probably just a coincidence. With that being said, I want to thank you guys for watching this video. If you watched all the way to the end, hit that like button if you enjoyed, as it's the best way to support me as a creator, and I certainly would appreciate that. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because I do put out videos like this more consistently now than I was the last couple of weeks, but that's not the point. You guys should definitely follow me on Twitter. I tweet about a lot of lore stuff. I mean, a shitload. If you don't even have Twitter, you should take 2 minutes to go make a Twitter and follow me, because you're missing out on speculation. You guys should also, if you'd like to, check out my Twitch channel. I'm trying to get more regular on streaming over there as well, so keep an eye out for that. It's twitch.tv/Pyromancer. And you guys are more than welcome to join my Discord, where we do speculate and stuff like that. There's a link to that down in the description below. But with that all being said, I appreciate you guys very much. Thank you so much for watching. Stay awesome, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Peace!